The rain had just begun to fall when four little girls ran toward a tired single father standing outside a small grocery store. They were laughing, holding hands, completely unaware that the next few words would shatter a 12-year-old mystery. One of them looked up at the quiet man, pointed at the faded tattoo on his wrist, and smiled with innocent excitement. Then all four girls spoke almost at the same time. They told him their mom had the exact same tattoo. The shopping bag slipped from his hand. Apples rolled across the wet sidewalk as his heart stopped for what felt like an eternity. For years he had convinced himself that the past was gone forever, buried beneath pain, unanswered questions, and lonely nights. But in that single impossible moment, everything he believed suddenly changed. Before we continue this emotional story, please take a second to like this video, leave a comment telling us if you believe kindness and second chances can change lives, share this story with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching stories that stay with you long after they end. Daniel Carter had spent the last 12 years raising his 8-year-old son Noah alone. Life had never been easy. Every sunrise meant another battle against overdue bills, exhausting work shifts, and the constant fear that he wasn't giving his son enough. He worked as a mechanic in a quiet town where everyone knew each other's names. His hands were rough from years of fixing engines, but they were always gentle whenever Noah needed comfort. Every evening, no matter how tired he was, Daniel helped with homework, cooked dinner, and tucked his son into bed with the same promise that tomorrow would be better. Noah never complained. He had learned very young that his father carried invisible pain. He noticed the old photograph hidden inside a wooden drawer, the one Daniel looked at only when he believed nobody was watching. The picture showed a smiling young woman with bright green eyes standing beside a younger Daniel on a beach. Their wrists were pressed together, revealing matching compass tattoos. Noah had asked about her many times, but Daniel always smiled sadly and simply called her someone who had once meant everything. The truth was far more heartbreaking. 12 years earlier, Daniel and the love of his life, Emily, had dreamed about building a family together. They had been inseparable since college. The matching compass tattoos on their wrists symbolized a promise that no matter where life took them, they would always find their way back to each other. It was a beautiful promise until fate decided otherwise. Emily disappeared one autumn evening while driving to visit her sick grandmother in another state. Her car was discovered abandoned near a river after a violent storm. Rescue teams searched for weeks but found nothing except damaged belongings scattered by the floodwaters. Authorities eventually declared that she had most likely died in the accident. There was no body, no goodbye, and no answers. Daniel refused to believe it at first. For months he searched neighboring towns, contacted hospitals, and followed every tiny clue. But one by one, every lead ended in disappointment. Eventually life forced him to stop searching because Noah was born only weeks after Emily vanished. His tiny son became the reason Daniel kept breathing. Every ounce of love he had once given Emily was now poured into raising their child. Still, every night before sleeping, Daniel touched the faded compass tattoo on his wrist and whispered a silent apology for giving up the search. Years passed. The tattoo slowly faded, but the memories never did. On the rainy afternoon that changed everything, Daniel had only stopped at the grocery store to buy bread and milk after work. He was thinking about Noah's upcoming birthday when the four little girls approached him. They looked almost identical, ranging from about 5 to 10 years old. Each carried colorful backpacks decorated with cartoon animals. The oldest girl noticed Daniel's tattoo immediately. Her eyes widened with recognition before she excitedly called her sisters over. They stared at his wrist with complete certainty. One of the younger girls smiled and proudly explained that their mom had the exact same tattoo, in the exact same place. Daniel's breathing became uneven. He slowly knelt so he wouldn't frighten them. His voice trembled as he carefully asked where their mother had gotten the tattoo. The oldest girl shrugged innocently. She said their mother never talked about it. She always became quiet whenever someone asked. She only said it reminded her of someone she could no longer remember. Daniel felt the world spinning around him. Someone she could no longer remember. Those words echoed endlessly inside his mind. Before he could ask another question, an elderly woman hurried toward the girls from across the parking lot. She apologized for them bothering a stranger and gently gathered the children together. Daniel noticed they all called the woman Grandma Rose. Fighting every instinct to stay silent, Daniel politely introduced himself and mentioned what the girls had said about the tattoo. Grandma Rose's warm expression disappeared almost instantly. She studied Daniel's wrist for several long seconds before quietly asking him where he had gotten that design. Daniel explained everything. The matching tattoos, Emily, the disappearance, the years of searching. The elderly woman's face slowly turned pale. She admitted that her daughter, whose name was Emma, had been found unconscious beside a river over a decade earlier with no identification and severe memory loss. Doctors diagnosed permanent retrograde amnesia caused by head trauma. She couldn't remember her name, her family, or anything about her previous life. Since no missing person report matched her condition at the time, Rose had legally adopted her as her own daughter after months of caring for her through recovery. Emma had eventually built a new life. She later adopted 4 orphaned sisters after volunteering at a children's shelter, refusing to let them grow up separated. She became the loving mother the girls had never known. Daniel's hands shook uncontrollably. The timeline matched almost perfectly. The river, the memory loss, the compass tattoo she could never explain. Could Emily have survived? Could she have been alive all these years without remembering him or the son she never knew she had? Grandma Rose looked at Daniel with tears filling her eyes. She admitted there was something else she had never understood. Every single year on the same autumn date, Emma became unusually quiet. She would drive alone to the old riverside bridge, stand there for hours staring at the water, and come home crying without knowing why. She always described feeling as though someone important was waiting for her just beyond the reach of her memory. Daniel closed his eyes as emotion overwhelmed him. After 12 years of believing he had buried the love of his life forever, hope had suddenly returned. But hope also brought fear. What if Emma truly was Emily? And what if she looked into his eyes, and remembered absolutely nothing? Daniel barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Emily's smile from years ago, the compass tattoo on her wrist, and the innocent faces of the 4 little girls who had unknowingly reopened a chapter of his life he had forced himself to close. Hope filled his heart, but fear stood beside it. He had dreamed of finding Emily for 12 long years. Now that the impossible seemed within reach, he was terrified that she might not remember him at all. The following morning, Grandma Rose called and gently invited Daniel to visit. She explained that Emma had no idea about their conversation and asked him not to overwhelm her. Daniel agreed. He brought Noah with him, believing that if this woman truly was Emily, she deserved to know she had a son. The drive felt endless. Noah quietly held his father's hand, sensing that this day was different from every other day they had shared. When they arrived at the small farmhouse on the edge of town, the 4 little girls were playing in the front yard. They happily waved at Daniel and Noah as if they were already old friends. Moments later, the front door opened. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. Standing there was the woman he had loved with every piece of his soul. She looked older, her hair slightly shorter, and there were tiny lines around her eyes that 12 difficult years had gently written onto her face. But it was Emily. There was no doubt in his mind. The same kind eyes, the same gentle smile, the same faded compass tattoo resting on her wrist. Emma smiled politely, completely unaware of the storm inside Daniel's heart. She welcomed them inside with kindness, offering tea while the children laughed together in the living room. Daniel struggled to speak. Every word caught in his throat. Emma noticed his nervousness and admitted that she felt strangely familiar around him, although she couldn't explain why. As they talked, Daniel carefully shared pieces of his past without pressuring her. He spoke about the love he had once lost, about the woman who disappeared during the storm, and about the matching tattoos they had gotten to remind each other that true love always finds its way home. Emma listened in silence. Without realizing it, she reached for her own wrist and gently traced the faded compass with her fingers. Suddenly, a sharp pain rushed through her head. Small flashes of memory appeared like broken pieces of an old movie. A beach, laughter, ocean waves, a young man smiling, a promise whispered beneath a sunset. She grabbed the edge of the table as tears filled her eyes. She couldn't explain why those images felt so real. Daniel wanted nothing more than to hold her, but he knew forcing the truth would only make things worse. Instead, he simply thanked Grandma Rose for inviting them and prepared to leave. Just before he reached the door, Noah quietly walked toward Emma. The little boy looked into her eyes with innocent curiosity. He didn't know exactly what was happening, but he knew this woman made his father cry. Noah gently handed her the old photograph Daniel had carried for years. Emma stared at it. Her hands began trembling uncontrollably. She recognized the smiling couple before her mind understood why. Then her eyes slowly moved to the tiny baby ultrasound picture tucked behind the photograph. A wave of emotions crashed into her. More memories flooded back. A hospital visit. A heartbeat echoing through a small room. Daniel laughing as he held her hand. A whispered promise that they would become the happiest family in the world. Emma suddenly burst into tears. She apologized over and over because she couldn't remember everything, but deep inside she felt the truth pulling at her heart. Daniel finally stepped forward. He gently told her there was nothing to apologize for. None of what happened had been her choice. Grandma Rose quietly admitted she had spent years wondering if someone somewhere had been searching for her daughter. She had prayed that if such a person existed, fate would eventually bring them together. It finally had. Over the following months, Daniel never rushed Emma. Instead of trying to force old memories back, they built new ones. They spent weekends together in the park, celebrated birthdays as one growing family, and watched Noah become the protective older brother the four girls had never had. Little by little, Emma's memories returned. Not all at once. Sometimes it was a favorite song. Sometimes the smell of rain. Sometimes an old joke only Daniel understood. Each memory became another piece of a beautiful life that had once been stolen from them. One evening they returned to the same beach where they had exchanged matching tattoos many years before. The sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon as waves gently rolled onto the shore. Emma looked at Daniel with tears shining in her eyes. This time she remembered everything. She remembered their first meeting. She remembered falling in love. She remembered the storm. She remembered waking up in a hospital unable to remember her own name. Most painfully, she remembered losing 12 years she could never get back. Daniel quietly wiped away her tears. He reminded her that love is never measured by the years we lose but by the moments we choose to treasure after we find each other again. The children ran across the sand, laughing together as if they had always been one family. Noah chased the four girls while Grandma Rose watched from a nearby bench with grateful eyes. For the first time in over a decade, Daniel no longer felt incomplete. The compass tattoo on his wrist had finally fulfilled its promise. It had guided two lost hearts back to each other. If this story has touched your heart so far, please leave a heart in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Your words may inspire someone who is silently waiting for hope to find them again. Months later, Daniel and Emma organized a simple family celebration instead of a wedding. They believed they didn't need another ceremony to prove their love. Every person present had already witnessed the greatest miracle of all. Not a miracle of magic, but a miracle of patience, forgiveness, and hope. The four little girls who had innocently pointed at a faded tattoo had unknowingly reunited a broken family. Noah had gained not only the mother he had dreamed about but also four wonderful sisters who loved him without condition. Grandma Rose never stopped thanking God for allowing her to care for Emily until the day her real family found her again. Before we end, if this story reminded you that hope should never be abandoned, please write, "Love always finds its way home," in the comments. As the family stood together watching the sunset, Daniel looked at the faded compass on his wrist one last time. It was no longer just ink beneath his skin. It had become proof that even after the darkest storms, even after years of heartbreak and silence, the people meant for each other can still find their way back. Sometimes all it takes is the innocent words of four little girls, the courage to believe one more time, and a heart that never truly gives up.